and pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Okay, another episode of this podcast, Juan Around, that keeps changing names. Now let's just call it Juan Around Talks and Thoughts. Yeah, I think it sounds cool. Anyway, I hope you're having a good day. Here is super hot, almost like 30 degrees, so it's fucking annoying. I have had a lot of time to think, and I've been thinking about the future of societies and stuff like that. And we are going around topic that I think I've been developing quite in my mind. I think the future belongs to women. Maybe not for the reason that most of like women supporters may believe, but anyway, this is my analysis. I hope you like it. Let's just start. Okay, now first of all, this needs to have like a disclaimer. As I was explaining before, I'm not a feminist. This is not like an episode of an ally or something similar trying to say that women are super awesome or something like that. These are just thoughts, facts, some analysis, some kind of predictions about something that could happen in the future, maybe 100 years from now or something like that. And more importantly, a future that will also evolve into something different later. So I'm just thinking about like a very specific period in the future. So when I say the future belongs to women, it is like a specific point of time, like a period. And as I said before, this is not for any kind of ally reasons. So having said that, let's start by saying that I do believe that men and women have different biological characteristics. And despite the fact that there is a cultural factor involved on the development of an individual, as well as a factor related to how anybody, like the kids, are raised, I think biology has like a very powerful impact. Now, perhaps one of the most famous exponents of these kind of thoughts nowadays is Jordan Peterson. Many people know about him. He became very popular in recent years. So, despite agreeing with Peterson in many of the topics that he touched, I think he's also wrong, meaning that I may do not want to think, or I may not want the things that I kind of predict, but I think that is going to be something similar to what I'm going to say now. Anyhow, focusing on the women topic, there are 2 points to consider here related to gender that is worth mentioning, and related like feminism, I would say, like specifically. The feminist conception that or pretends to attribute that women are the same as men and have the same capabilities. That's like one line of thought. And the other one, it's also feminist, and I think, and is the concept that women have something special, a special characteristic to offer to enrich certain fields, and that should be cultivated as such and promoted. As you can see, like anybody could notice that these are basically opposites. Like one is like basically the same men and women, and the other one is women are different and have something special to offer. Curiously enough, and despite being like naturally opposites, some want to have it both. Like as the Una Bomber may say, like they want to eat the cake and have it. And so in my case, I am, at least in some part, with the point number 2. And I completely dismiss the point number 1, the idea that we are like basically the same. For me, it's a little bit kind of delusional. I do believe that has a reason to exist, like a historical reason to have this kind of line of thought. But I think it could be even dangerous, especially for women. But more than criticize these kind of ideas, I will focus on the topic. So, point number 2 it is. So, why I'm saying that the future belongs to women? Okay, generally, I do believe that causes, movements, and particularly feminism itself, have done not as much, I would say like even little, in a pragmatic way to change or improve women's lives. I think technology is probably one of the strongest things that have contributed to the improvement of women's lives. It has contributed tons. And despite not agreeing with my general point that it's basically the strongest change, technology, despite not agreeing with that, several feminist courses agree with the incredible impact that technology has to do with the development of women, considering not only like birth control, for example, but also products such as even laundry machines, as really impactful factors for the development of the freedom of women. A good example is the course Feminism and the Future of Women by Esther Friedman. She elaborates like the complete explanation of feminism from beginning to end, different waves. And again, she doesn't agree with me that is like the major point technology, but she gives like a particular like importance to that point. So I understand that it may sound over pragmatic or like too pragmatic, even funny if you want, that if you think about it. But the control of your own reproduction, for example, the practically like the total control of it, like it's a huge improvement. And the possibility of more free time, for example, with these kind of accessories like the iron and the laundry machine, etc. It sounds weird, but provides women with more free time and fulfilling their own interests without being like exposed to the rejection of the times of the husband that wants to have like the food in the table or whatever during all this period of time, 50s and 60s, etc. So it was like a way, like a soft change that started to be developed. Now, of course, considering the first wave of feminism focused on the voting, in which it's funny because in that course that I was telling you about, she explains about how it was a little bit kind of deceiving because it was sold the idea that if your wife would have voting rights, you will kind of have like 2 votes. So men support this proposal of women voting, and in fact, it's just funny because they thought, okay, so if my wife votes, I will have 2 votes because she will vote what I will tell her to vote. So wrong they were, which is of course good. Anyway, technology has been the main benefactor of the women liberation, in my opinion, and continues today with the next, for example, the pill of the next morning pill, for example, and even the development of non-lethal weaponry, if you think about it, that can save the life of any person with a weaker body than their attacker, which most of the cases, whether we like it or not, is between a man and a woman, because generally speaking, a woman is physically weaker than a man. but these kind of equalizers, like even guns, well, balance things out. So as I was mentioning, I think that men and women have like different traits, like psychologically and biologically, and it's like an evolutionary process. Most of the people believe that men tend to be like more logical thinking, and women tend to focus more on people, men to focus more on things, and women tend to be more agreeable, men tend to be more violent, etc. By the way, for those listening in Instagram TV, this is the time to say goodbye. You can continue listening on Spotify, of course Anchor, and Google Podcast, YouTube, and of course all the links are in the description of this series, and in Instagram TV on the post, and you will find it there, so don't worry about it, and follow the discussion. I think it will be quite interesting. And of course you can follow me in all the social media, etc. Juan Around, in anything, Instagram, Twitter, etc., etc. So for those that stay, let's just continue with the topic. Okay, so let's just start to throw some information. I choose some studies and some lines of thought because they are supported by many other studies, so I just select one study that represents others, and I select the line of thought that has more kind of studies about it or saying similar things. For example, by the end of 2018, Sarah Knapton, which is like the science editor of The Telegraph, wrote about a research carried out by the University of Cambridge. This article or research conclude that the traits, I will like basically quote it, the traits can even predict which professions people choose, with those working in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, which is commonly called STEMs, scoring more highly in systematizing or masculine traits. That's exactly how the study said it. While those in non-STEM jobs more likely to have empathetic or feminine traits. Again, that's not me, it's what the study says. And it continues saying, on the average, women have a greater ability to recognize what another person is thinking intuitively and respond appropriately. On the other hand, men have a stronger drive to view the world through rule-based systems, striving to learn how things work through their underlying parts. So in the Telegraph article, Sarah quotes this study and quotes also Dr. Varun Warrior from the Cambridge team that did the research, who said, these sex differences in the typical population are very clear. So as always in science or in any kind of paper, we don't talk, most of the time people don't talk about the outliers, they talk like about the media, about the common trait that they see. So the doctor also pointed out that individual differences in empathy and systematizing are partly genetic, partly influenced by our prenatal hormonal exposure, that's quite interesting, and partly due to environmental experiences. And of course, he points out that more research needs to be done in order to know like which factors belong to which, right? So like genetically, environmental experiences, what factors influence the traits. And I would understand if by this point you say, see, it may not be genetic, it may be another factor, For which Jordan Peterson, again quoting this guy, and others, not only him, again I just put like a frame of reference, but many people say the same. They point out about what is called the Scandinavian paradox, which basically shows that in countries where the environmental differences between men and women are reduced, the choices or the biological differences increase. So the more people have the freedom to choose and create their own personality with their own traits, whether masculine or feminine or whatever you want to call it, the more they reinforced what the assumptions that we have about masculine and feminine. Meaning that if you allow them or give them more free to choose, women choose more activities related to womanhood, and men choose more activities related to manhood. And in this point, I would like us to focus in something that I consider more important. First, to say again, whether we like it or not, those are the studies, those are the results. But what I really want to focus is, why are these traits seen as negatives? Why when friends that I have that are feminists, they consider, when you say okay, so these are feminine traits, some people get upset, and that's the main point that I want to emphasize in this. Number one, that this is a construction, and number two, that construction is shifting, and it will shift. So why people see these feminine traits as negative? I think is because societies have prioritized these qualities, the male qualities, as more beneficial for society. And if you expect me to say otherwise, and they are not, I don't think so. I think they were quite beneficial for society. And I do agree that rationality is very important. For example, it was essential, the scientific method, etc. I do not believe that everything is just subjective or a social construction. Trust me, I've seen how that works in academia. It doesn't look nice. It doesn't work. However, I believe that these highly valuable characteristics are part of a context that currently is kind of destroying itself, not in a bad way, it's just evolving. Maybe even without realizing it, this is happening. These valuable traits are starting to be less valuable. They were very important before, but now they are just not as important. Let me explain it differently. Imagine that the male traits are similar to a horse, for example, while the female traits are similar to a car. So the value of them is completely dependent on the context. We know that a car is way faster, but without roads, let's say maybe 500 years ago, a horse was more useful. But now we have roads, and the car is just better. And I think in these traits we are in that point. And this is where it gets quite interesting. Think, for example, about how strong a man can be. The muscles, the bone structure is designed to hard labor. They are simply better than women in that, again, generally speaking. For example, cutting a tree with an axe can be a nightmare for an average woman, and just maybe a hassle for an average regular man. However, cutting a tree, chopping the tree with a chainsaw, can be almost as easy for men and women in normal conditions. Normal people, normal conditions. So what about carrying a lot of weight, for example? Well, technology has also equalized those between men and women, with trucks, with tractors, with different ways to transport and carry heavy weights. Speed the same. If we go back to cars, doesn't matter how fast a man can be, it will not outrun a woman in a car. So all these developments to make life to make life easier for men, kind of to reduce the amount of labor that they need to do, has created a balance between the brute force that a man can provide with strength, and it makes their strength basically useless. Even in a confrontation, the strongest man cannot be as strong as a woman with a gun. Like, it's just like that. So one of the most important factors that talk about men, we have covered how physically strong a man can be in relation to a woman, again and again and again, generally speaking, right? Now we have the other important factor that is always bringing the attention by people thinking that men are superior in systematic thinking, right? That they just are better at this kind of pragmatic thinking and problem solving, etc. Again, I will assume for this, related to the current studies and stuff, let's just assume that is the case. Take chess for example. Women are less focused than men, don't train as hard, and they are in a physical disadvantage in chess. And I'm not saying this is not me. So before you hate me, this is not me. I'm not the one saying that. It's a University Oxford student, Ho Yifan, better known as the Queen of Chess, who also considers a biological aspect of tiredness for the long periods that the game, that you need to play a chess game. So according to her, women are in disadvantage, but also the cultural aspects in which women are told that winning in the female league is enough. So again, she also rationalized the aspect of the environment. There is a quote, but in one point, for example, she was in an interview and they asked her, okay, so just tell us if you see a difference, like a difference that is in a man and a woman just by being a man and a woman. And she said the following. She said, to put it simplistically, I think male players tend to have a kind of overview or strategy for the whole game, rather than focusing too much attention on one part of the game. It could be interesting to explore this further. I need to do more research to answer this properly. End of the quote. And again, you may say, so there are other aspects, not only biological, for which again I will refer to the Scandinavian paradox, but that's just secondary. More than that, I think my main point is something totally different. So it is like this. So listen, the inequality is not in the differences, but in the value given to the traits. And those values are shifting because, just as horses, those male traits are reaching their final maturity point, and the female traits will continue having space to grow. Speaking about chess and these kind of logical games, do you know what is better at chess than a male? A computer. The advances of what has been called artificial intelligence has such an exponential development that it's just astonishing. I was working on it in my master's degrees, and it's just amazing. Being translated into men putting another nail on one of the areas in which they had the advantage. And putting it simply, a woman with a computer, a regular woman with a computer, can defeat in chess almost any man, any normal man, any time of the day. And this is the trick. The focus on society in men traits has shaped most of the technology developments to make men's life easier. And indirectly, it has given access to women to the same traits that men have, but with artificial enhancements, making men kind of obsolete. Moreover, different analysts have listed the careers for the future, for a future after a huge AI development that is currently on the go. And most of the careers that will survive have the inherent traits of womanhood. So if you're a feminist, the worst that you can do is to try to make women to be more like men. It's just not going to have too much future. In the book AI Superpowers, China, Silicon Valley, and the New World Order, Kai-Fu Lee, which used to be working for Google and now he works in China, he considers that the social and creative / strategic based traits or jobs that have or require these kind of traits are most likely to survive. Among those, teachers. Many people relate teachers with women. Psychiatrists, social workers, wedding planners, among others. And many of them are like the typical stereotype of women. So the AI revolution automatized logical processes and labor focus on human connections. And remember, women are more interested in people while men are more interested in objects. So the majority of jobs that are going to survive are jobs that favor women traits. And of course there's some people that says, yeah, but there are new careers that are going to be invented, blah 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 blah. Okay, so far, again, different studies, different articles, and you can check about it, suggest that it's not going to be like that. The development is not like the others. The comparison with the Industrial Revolution is just doesn't apply. The AI development will not create another bunch of new jobs because it's related to thinking. So all experts, like real experts in this field, agree that it's just not the case. So the surviving jobs are going to be few and are going to be most likely very related to human touch. Of course, as I mentioned, there are some strategic jobs related to strategy, and many could say that that's like a male trait, but I doubt that they are going to last for too long. The military, for example, is really focusing not only in using AI for like common ground applications, but also in making strategies, and I doubt that other areas are going to be far behind. Probably they are going to follow that trade. And moreover, these kind of applications can be fulfilled by women. Granted, we have like CEOs and others that usually are linked to male traits and probably will survive. We have seen like major incredible fiascos that women have had in leading positions. For example, this girl from Terranos, Elizabeth Holmes, that it was considered like the next like Steve Jobs, and it was like complete fiasco. But on the other hand, we have women that are very, very capable. I was reading, for example, an article about this woman, Jacinda, I think that's pronounced Jacinda Ardern. I think it's Ardern. It's the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Damn, like she's amazing. So it's so women in these positions, and I need to be clear, women capable, not to those positions, selected because are good, not because are just women. Those are like a strong possibility. Like this girl from New Zealand is just amazing. And if you research about her, not only the way she managed the coronavirus crisis, but like she has done like a lot. Anyhow, so this what I'm trying to explain with this is that these leading positions can be fulfilled by women, but I think we shouldn't expect to have the same traits that men, or maybe it will be like nature, like something natural, but these traits that have been like kind of overvalued may not be the best for the future. So in this environment, what I think it will happen with men, well, it is uncertain. We see currently just like a super fucked up and confused men around the world in the culture, particularly related to relationships, and they are super confused. Some of them, it's very weird. For example, talking about this, like the dating, in which, again, several studies support this, in which women are attracted to like the top successful people most of the time in any trait, you know, depending on the context. Maybe the strongest in a context where being strong is important, or rich in a context that being rich is important, etc., etc. But since women in general value the ability of men to provide and protect in general, but what will happen in a society in which women do not need to somebody to provide for them? Or, for example, what will happen in a truly safety society? A woman that it just doesn't need the protection of a man at all. Well, those traits that have been like important related to a man, they are not going to be that important. So it's going to be very difficult for some men to get laid, I think. I don't know. Or maybe it will be like a much more honest kind of relationship, in which is like, okay, I really don't need you, I don't need your protection of your money, I'm with you because you are cool. That could also be. But trying to go more in the sexual part of it, yes, we can say that women also get horny and they will need men, but they don't get as horny as men. And then again, quoting these studies, there are many the studies that back this up. One of those, probably the most famous, is not as new, but is probably the most famous. It was in 2001. It was like a meta-analysis. I think the main or the lead researcher was Roy Baumeister, and there was also Kathleen, I don't remember her last name, Kathleen Katanis or something like that. They combining the result of over almost, I think, 150 studies, something like that, related to the measure of the sex drive, like directly, like how to measure it. So the study looked to the different kind of measures, and they found that men had more frequent sexual thoughts, fantasies, spontaneous arousals, you know. So, for instance, I think one study that they looked it up, it was saying that about 90% of the men like experience like sexual desire like many times a week, like very frequently, and women was like 52. And again, like I'm not saying these are like studies, and I base this in studies, and I don't think it should be taken like something wrong, like hey, women have also desire. Like yeah, of course it's good, but again, you should see it like as a good trait. If you don't have such a sexual need, you are more independent because you don't have that need. So yeah, men are quite more physical, I think, and I think they need more sex, and also it was interesting, a study, I think that is in it's in the book Homo Deus, I think, that it explains, I think it's Homo Deus, don't quote me on that one, that few species, like they choose their partner, like it's not like that, the person to have sex, like in most of them, like the male, they just have sex with something, like some like female, and it's another males that try to prevent that for happening, because they want like their evolutional, like genetic code to pass. But in the case of humans, the woman is the one that decides the man she wants. The man she wants, like again, of course, this is without dismissing all the cultures and all the times in which families force marriages, etc., etc. What I'm saying is that in the brain, differently than in other species, women says like, I want that one, and it's different for other animals. So let's just put it like in a very economical way of thinking. If both men and women were like kind of commodities, if we are talking like in an economical sense, women are more in demand in the market of relationships, and men are less in demand in a heterosexual relationship. So I mean, this final rant is just to explain that in the future, where the strength is not useful, safety is guaranteed, this kind of methodical thought that men have is done by computers, and in which women traits are more valuable in the marketplace. And finally, like considering that men desires more women than women desires men, well, men will have like a very, very complicated life, I think. That's, I think. Perhaps it was about time, like, you know, like maybe it was about time. Perhaps like years of considering women as assets, or like literally considering as a commodities, are telling men, you know, karma is a bitch, so now it's your turn to be in the other side, I think. Making men kind of like, you know, they are architects of their own fall, their own like end. I don't know. Who knows? It will be interesting to see the future. I don't know. It's just a series of thoughts and ideas to go around. So yeah, that's that. Anyhow, I think it's time to say goodbye. It has been like around like 30 minutes, so I hope you enjoyed this. Again, I try to just look like studies and analyze, and you know, I'm not trying to say that anyone is better than another person or something like that at all. Like that's just not the way I see it. It's just trying to analyze, or try to, you know, like seeing like these kind of possible futures or whatever. Anyway, for full information of some other interesting topics, or that I consider interesting, you can check my website, onearound.art.blog. Probably I would put it .com eventually, but right now it's like that, .art.blog. And if you're listening this Spotify or Google Podcast or Anchor, you can check it in YouTube. If you prefer YouTube, you can check it in YouTube. I upload those also in YouTube. And if you're checking this in YouTube, again, you can use Spotify or Google Podcast or Anchor. In Spotify, even if you have like a free subscription, you can download the podcast, so it's super cool because you can do whatever, you can do your chores or whatever and listening to the podcast. You can find me Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and as Juan Around. I don't post too much in Twitter, but Instagram I post quite something, particularly about my trips and stuff like that. I started like a video blog because a friend told me, you should do a video blog, and I'm in this part and said like, okay, whatever, let's just try it and see if it works. So I started also a video blog about like my travels. So if you are into that, you can check it in YouTube, or you can check it in Instagram TV. Just go directly to my Instagram, Juan Around, and you will see like my Instagram TV stories, I think it's called. And if you love my content, that I hope in the future, maybe not now, but in the future, somebody will love my content, you can support me in Patreon. Of course, patreon.com in /OneAround, and I upload their videos more like personal, like the personal journey that I'm doing. For people that don't know, I was working as a journalist for many years, and now like I just want to do this, and I hope it brings something good for people. So I upload videos related to like what I think about like this trip that I'm trying to create, this kind of content. You can also support me in buy me a coffee /Juan Around, and yeah, I will probably also post like this kind of content. And trust me, like it says buy me a coffee, like of course it's just the page, but most likely I will use that money for coffee because I really love coffee. So again, what everybody says nowadays, right? Like follow, like, share, subscribe to all the content or whatever. And yeah, it actually helps a lot. So yeah, if you can do it, just please do it. And as always, see you around, my friend.